Hi all, it's Emily Rand with ESPN Esports, and we're going to talk a little bit about the first round robin of the group stage. Joining me now is Ashley Kang. We're going to talk some LCK. So, Ashley, what are your opinions on how the LCK teams have performed thus far? Starting with, I guess we'll start with SKT since they've looked like by far and away not only the strongest LCK team, but I think one of the strongest teams at this tournament.
I've been pleasantly surprised by how SKT has been performing. It is true that they had a very dominating performance at the summer split of LCK, especially at the finals. But what has surprised me is their ability to adapt to the meta and play different things, especially at the bot lane. Non-mage champions has been a hot thing coming into this patch, and I've been pleasantly surprised as Teddy, who is known for the AD carry, going all the way back to the generic years, has played Kel on his first game at Worlds and also drafted Yasuo. So that's been pleasantly surprising. They can play a lot of early game aggression, and as always, Teddy has been the critical point of the game as he activates different lanes in the early game and also a crucial fight on the mid and late game, playing champions such as Gragas.
Yeah, I think their execution hasn't always been like it's super on point for the comps they've drafted, but the fact that they're drafting them and also the fact that in the process of playing the game, they've actually figured it out like en route, I think speaks really highly to them. And actually, I've been impressed with how they've shown up. Damwon was another team you and I talked about. I'm going to save Griffin for last because I think there's a little bit more to talk about there. But Damwon was a team that I was thinking would come out of play-ins and really be able to take what they learned and apply it, because previously they have been a bit malleable in that regard. Despite the game that they did drop to TL, what have you thought of Damwon's performance thus far?
Despite them going through play-ins, I still think that Damwon is in the process of warming up because this is a new meta, new big stage for everyone in the team. Compared to SKT, Damwon has always been known for being a very strong individual laners team, with Nuguri being hyped up and Showmaker also being a very solid, consistent, high-ceiling player. They have their losses often came from not from the lack of mechanical prowess, but often from the execution. They will decide to pick up a wrong fight in the wrong moment, or decide to focus on the wrong lane, or try to focus on specific objectives too much. But they have played 3 games so far, and every single game I've seen them improving, becoming more careful about how they execute things, and their performance have been looking better and better. And because of that, I do have quite a high expectation of Damwon, which was already highlighted by the fact that they were able to defeat Invictus Gaming. And one thing I want to mention is, even though we have talked about the fact that they are a top and mid lane heavy carry, in the last game against Invictus Gaming, they were able to play through bot lane. And
it shocked us all.
And were able to manage it and bring it to a victory. So I think this adds an extra case to Damwon Gaming being a strong team, because top and mid lane was also strong, but hey, they can play through bot lane too.
Yeah, I think the most important thing for me is going forward, I do want to see people ban out the Kaisa against Nuclear, because he has looked significantly less comfortable on other champions outside of that. So I think that's a good way to attack Damwon. But I do agree that I think the most impressive thing about them is that, again, you can see the learning process. And I think that's actually super important for a team at Worlds. And when they do lose, instead of, getting up in their own heads about it, they just immediately adapt and adjust. And you can see that in real time, which is really nice. A team that I've been hypercritical of not adapting and not adjusting their play style, and I don't think they've done it thus far at Worlds, is Griffin, who, since last year, I've been really critical of this team, not because I thought they were bad, but because I thought they had massive holes in their early game specifically, and also their mid game, where they will be overly passive or overly cautious, and they leave opportunities open for other teams to attack them. I do think we've seen that thus far in the group stage, like putting aside all the other stuff that's going on outside of the game. I think in game, Griffin have been the least malleable of the Korean teams.
It's quite interesting to see what people perceive Griffin as, because often they get compared to G2, but I will say it is the opposite, because people still remember Griffin back in 2018, where they did play quite flexibly and able to pick up like strong early game team fights. But coming to 2019, they have become one of the slower team, even in the LCK, and that tendency has not quite gone away when they stepped into the world stage. I was expecting to see if Griffin can change up their game slightly, because I know that they have the potential to do so. A lot of the laners in that team have quite a large champion pool focused on by Viper, who is known for playing a variety of mage and non-Marksman champion, including that Teemo from 2018. But at the world stage, they still have the solid execution and being able to have a very solid team fight. But at the same time, they haven't been able to play early game aggression quite enough, which is highlighted by the game against G2, where G2 actually decided to pick more late game comp, while Griffin decided to opt to a composition that needed more early game snowballing. But despite having that comp, they weren't able to execute it. So I want to watch Griffin a bit more, see if they can actually execute that kind of early game aggression, because they probably know about it. It's just a matter of whether they are managed to deliver it.
Yeah, or if they're like willing to change their playstyle, because previously I know in interviews they've been actually really adamant about saying like we're really confident in our playstyle, we just didn't execute it properly, you know. So that tells me that they still do want to stick to what they know best, but execute it at a higher level. Now, my last question for you is, which of these teams are getting out of groups?
I think no one should doubt at this point that SKT is very, very likely to come out of the groups. This was touted as the group of death, with SKT and RNG and Fnatic drafted in the same group. But SKT has not only defeated RNG and Fnatic in very impressive games, but they were able to show consistency, mechanical prowess, and flexibility that all are required in the current meta. So I think SKT is heavy favorites for not only getting out of the group, but coming into the first place. Damwon is a bit of an interesting case. That group ended on a 3-way tie between Invictus Gaming, Team Liquid, and Damwon Gaming. But given that Damwon Gaming is an upward trend, I do see that it's more than 50% chance that Damwon Gaming does get out of groups. Griffin is on Group A, and despite seeing some holes in their strategy and game plan, they have finished the first week on a 2-1, and that's going to give them a lot of confidence coming into the second week, especially given that Cloud9 has been a little bit underperforming so far, especially in their early game and how they transitioned into a late game snowball.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me. Hopefully, I know you're rooting for all three of these teams to make it out, so hopefully you get your wish. And for more League of Legends coverage, keep it here on ESPN Esports.